Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we uncover the leadership life hacks that help you to experience breakout performance faster and rocket to success. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbach.
Call Center Coach develops and unites the next generation of call center leaders. Through our e-learning and community, individuals gain knowledge and skills in the 6 core competencies that is the blueprint that develops high-performing call center leaders. Successful supervisors do not just happen. So go to callcentercoach.com to learn more about enrollment and download your copy of the Supervisor Success Path ebook now. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm excited because actually, like with many of these shows, we're going to get to work on something I need to focus in on, but I'm certain that this particular topic is an area, especially with the time that we're in right now, is something that everybody can learn immensely from by our guest that we have on the show today. Gregg Ward was born and raised on the North Shore of Long Island, about 40 miles outside of New York City, and as he was growing up, he frequently went into the city with his parents to see theater, music, and sporting events. Gregg is the second of 3 boys and a classic middle child who often mediated his brother's fights and each other and their parents. Gregg's father was a famous sports writer for the New York Daily News who frequently invited major sports stars over to the house, including Joe Namath, Stanley Cup winning New York Islanders, and perhaps most influentially, the boxer Muhammad Ali, who became a regular guest. Gregg is fond of telling the story about how he met Ali when he was a boy and the piece of advice that he gave him. He said, "You respect yourself, you respect other people, and you'll do okay." This was an important lesson for Gregg, one which he carried with him throughout his life and career, eventually leading him to work as a consultant, facilitator, and coach on leadership with a strong focus on respect and what Gregg calls respectful leadership. Gregg's career is circuitous to say the least. He often tells people that he's lived 4 lives. 1, as a professional actor and writer and director in New York. 2, as a freelance correspondent and feature writer. 3, as a specialist trainer for the NYPD. And 4, as a consultant, facilitator, and executive coach. After his second book, The Respectful Leader, a business fable about how to influence others without intimidation, was published by John Wiley & Sons in 2016, it quickly became an award-winning bestseller. Gregg realized that his legacy would be focused on educating the world on respect and respectful leadership. As a result, in 2019, he founded and serves as the executive director for the Center for Respectful Leadership, a nonprofit dedicated to research, ongoing dialogues, training, and coaching. In addition to Gregg's keynote speeches and workshops, the center's team is currently developing a suite of online learning programs scheduled for launch this year. Gregg is an avid tennis player in a long-term relationship with small business owner Kathleen Aaron and has 1 son, Lee, from a previous marriage who works in sustainable gardening in Seattle, and 2 stepdaughters, Kate, an attorney in Washington, D.C., and Ali, a teacher in Madrid, Spain. Gregg Ward, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
I am ready. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Jim. Really appreciate it.
Well, and I'm glad you're here. Now, I've given my Legion a little bit about you, but can you share what your current passion is so that we can get to know you even better?
Sure, absolutely. Right now, I am in the midst of sending out the message to the world about the importance of respect and what I call respectful leadership, helping folks understand that respect is actually a very powerful motivator and a driver of connection and loyalty. And from a customer service point of view, respect is amazingly powerful and effective at driving sales.
Well, and as you say that, I mean, you and I have had the opportunity to chat before we actually hit record here, and we had some great discussion that I'm hoping we can pull into this episode. But your book that we're talking about and the insights from it, as well as your body of work as well, is about a fable and a character in it called Des. So if you could, introduce us to Des.
Sure. Des is a 30-some-odd-year-old guy who was previously the chief operating officer of a company that was owned by a large conglomerate. And the CEO of the conglomerate said, "Hey, you would be good to take over this medical device manufacturing firm that I've got out in San Diego. I'm going to put you in as CEO." And the moment Des arrives, he realizes that what he's gotten himself into is a big, hot mess The staff, all of the senior leadership absolutely have no respect for each other. They're losing money left, right, and center. Their best product is in the midst of stalling in the R&D department, and customer service is non-existent. It is an absolute mess, and he's been tasked to turn this thing around and do it with very little help, very little money, very little staff, and do it immediately. So that's Dez's challenge at the beginning of the book.
Well, talking about that person who he reports to, that person was more of, hey, are you whipping everything into shape? And if you're not whipping everything into shape, you're going to get whipped. I mean, and basically comes out and tells them, have 6 to 8.
Basically, you either do this or I'll get rid of you, just like I got rid of the last guy. So essentially what Des walks into is he's being told by his boss that he needs to get everybody shipshape and do it real fast. And nobody wants to cooperate with that because there's no trust. There's no respect amongst the entire group. And so what Des essentially does is he tries the old-fashioned command and control way. I'm the boss now, my way or the highway kind of thing. And that makes things even worse. But he's really fortunate in that there's a maintenance lady who happens to somehow be around whenever the poop is hitting the fan. And she takes him aside one day and says, maybe try a little respect. You might get a little better response that way. And he blows her off. But over time, he keeps making mistakes, keeps ordering people around, keeps pissing everybody off. And he finally learns to listen to her advice, and she becomes an ally to him. And eventually, with her help and by winning the respect of everybody else in the organization, he is able to turn that thing around. And the fable is essentially around how important respect is in any kind of professional or even personal relationship.
Well, and even as you're saying that, I find if we're talking about emerging leaders, so, I have a leadership academy called Call Center Coach for those in customer service and contact centers, and really helping that emerging new leader. And quite frankly, we've even had some people who've been supervisors as far as title for a long time that really haven't had the opportunity to get a lot of development, But when I start thinking about that young, innocent, leader who's just on their path, it is so easy to fall into some of the things that you're talking. Command and control is easy.
Yeah.
It's very simple. I mean, we've got this stuff to do. Let's get it done. And it's, hey, if not, go on. It's the other part where you talk about the value component, the respect component. That's the hard part. So,
it's hard because we haven't been necessarily exposed to it, or no one's ever talked about it as being important. And part of the challenge for all of us, and I know I was, my dad was a former Marine, great father, wonderful dad. But when my dad gave an order, he expected it to be followed without question. That was that. And my mom to a certain degree too. So most of us were raised in what I call command and control households. The other leadership style that we see a lot of, especially you'll see it in sales and customer service, is what's called the carrot and stick leadership style. Hey, I'm the boss, do as I say, you'll get rewarded for it. But if you screw up, you're going to get the stick. You'll get punished for it. Well, in certain situations, that works really well. For example, commission-based sales. When I was going through college, I sold subscriptions to the Boston Ballet. I went to Boston University. I got a job selling subscriptions. I got minimum wage, but I got a really nice commission. And because I have the gift of gab, and I'd be very informal and pleasant and friendly with everybody I talked to, I did great. I put myself through college selling subscriptions because I knew the deal. I knew that if I followed the script and I followed the process and I brought my pleasant, friendly self and respectful self to the process, by golly, I was going to get the carrot at the end of the process. And I got a lot of carrots. And if I screwed up, I'm like, yeah, I screwed up. I'll do better next time. And so that relationship, that leadership style worked for me in that situation. Command and control also works in police or military environments. If we're active duty military, we're in the middle of a firefight, we don't have time to stand around and say, well, Jim, what are your thoughts on this? So, oh, hey, Susie, do you see it any differently? No, somebody has to take control and say, you do this, and you do that. And that's how lives are saved. So command and control, carrot and stick, these are very, very familiar to all of us. And none of it has anything to do with about respect, trust, building personable, friendly relationships. And that comes later as adults.
Okay. I'll have to question that later about adult thing, but but okay.
I hear you.
Like you said, it's very common, to have the carrot and stick. I mean, it's taught a lot. And then we also have the command and control. But then I'm starting to think, well, are you talking about situational leadership, or are we, but no, you're talking about respectful leadership. And so you talk in the book that there's 7 respectful do's. There, be the first to respect, practice regular respect, the respect worthy, look for diamonds in the rough, get your shift together. That's SHIFT. And then it's nip disrespect in the bud respectfully, and then offer a full apology with disrespect. And I mean, for me, and you and I had talked about this, is I see myself struggling, with all those. I see even in my own house that, heck, man, I'll do command and control. I'll do carrot and stick. And what I need to do a better job of is a respectful thing, partly because of how I grew up and where I grew up. And so when I start, looking about this type of leadership, and talking about that situational and all that stuff, really kind of encapsulate this for us. What is respectful leadership?
Well, we've all heard of the old phrase, the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And that's good. And you'll see it in every culture. Every religious text has that golden rule in there. The problem with the golden rule is it assumes everybody wants to be done unto the same way. And we all know that's just not true. What you consider, Jim, to be respectful to you may not be what I consider to be respectful to me. So what I propose that leaders do is add in what's called the platinum rule. It was developed by Dr. Tony Alessandra, who's an expert on interpersonal skills, leadership skills, and he's just wonderful. He wrote a book called The Platinum Rule. And essentially, the platinum rule says, do unto others as they would have you do unto them. So for me, the simplest way to describe respectful leadership is the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and the platinum rule, do unto others as they would have you do unto them, working in concert together. So that's essentially what I'm saying. There's some little practices inside of that. The first one is be the first to respect. There's a kind of myth out there that if you're my boss, should be respected automatically because you're my boss. What we have found is most people do not like to be told they must respect someone else based solely on their authority or position. In fact, the research tells us that most people really bristle at that. They find it disrespectful if the boss says, you must respect me, or respect the badge, or respect the bars on my shoulder. Most people find that offensive. Instead, what I argue is that if you've been elevated into the responsibility of being a leader, it's your job to earn the respect of the people that you lead. And you do that by treating them with respect first. And 9 times out of 10, what we find is they will reciprocate with respect to you. So it's your job, in my opinion, as a leader, to respect first before insisting that others respect you. Does that make sense?
Most definitely.
Great. One of the others I want to expound upon is a little play upon words that I always have fun with. We call it get your shift together. And what that's all about is not me being foul, using foul language, but it's more about getting your attention to what we call your emotional shift. And I know many of you, your listeners, have done work on emotional intelligence. And what we do know is this, is any leader who's in any kind of position of authority is going to have problems being thrust upon them all the time. And you're going to, because you're a human being, naturally react to those problems. And sometimes those problems are going to be big, and you're going to vent, you're going to be upset, there's going to be a sense of emotion coming out of you. And your job as a leader is to get that emotional shift together before it infects the people who work for you. Because they're watching you. They are watching you like a hawk, and they're reading the emotional effluences that's coming off of you. And if you're not managing that stuff well, by golly, it will just ripple like an infection throughout your organization. And this is why leaders, especially in the C-suite, must be so careful to manage their emotional life well. Because if they don't, it will infect the entire organization. And I call that getting your shift together.
Well, as you're talking, I start thinking about intent, and I'm wanting to ask the question, or I'm thinking about, should I, whether or not it's a brand new situation, brand new potential relationship, and that whole trust hasn't been built yet, or even if it's an existing one, that you overtly say, I expect myself to show you respect, but then you know what? I expect you to return it.
You could, but I found it's redundant. I found if you just tell your team, you know what, folks, I'm going to hold myself to a high standard of respect and treat you with respect to the best of my ability, they'll go, oh, that's cool. And what we find is it's one thing to say that, but when you start actually practicing what I call, as you mentioned, the 7 respectful do's, they will pick up on it big time. And they will reciprocate respect. It's basically reciprocal respect. It works. It really is very powerful, and it works very well. And there's some neuroscience involved in that. And I only recently learned about this in the last 5 or 6 years, about how when, let's say, for example, Jim, you're my boss, and you treat me in a way that I consider, using the platinum rule, in a way that I consider respectful. Well, my brain perceives that treatment of me at a very base level. And my amygdala, the what I call the drugstore of the brain, sends a message to release a hormone called oxytocin. And I'm sure you've heard of oxytocin. It's the bonding hormone, the love hormone. Well, I feel good when you treat me in a way that I consider respectful. And that actually kind of radiates through my body. And the thing of it is, I will not only treat you with respect back, but also the other people I come into contact with respect as well, because I'm feeling good. So, and then eventually I will start thinking about what you did. And if you continue to treat me in a respectful way, I'll continue to have those little hits of oxytocin. And then eventually I'll put on a pair of sunglasses. And across the lenses, it says respectful person. And every time I see you and encounter you, I will perceive you through this lens of respectful person. And so I've developed what's called an unconscious or a bias, basically an ongoing bias in favor of you. Of course, the opposite is also true. If you treat me in a way that I consider disrespectful, and what's fascinating about many leaders think, well, if I treat them the way I like to be treated, then it'll be okay. That'll be considered respectful. That's not the case. You as a leader have to find out, what do your team consider to be respectful and what they consider to be disrespectful. So let's say we treat each other in a way that we consider disrespectful. My brain's going to release a number of hormones, and I'm sure you all know adrenaline. The other is cortisol, the stress hormone. And there's a third hormone that I can barely pronounce. I think it's norepinephrine or something like that. But all this hormonal cocktail in our system, it triggers the fight, flight, freeze response in us. We actually feel under threat. It's not a huge threat like I'm going to die, but it does create a physical sensation in our bodies. And if you continue to treat me in a way that I consider disrespectful, or vice versa, eventually I'll put on a pair of sunglasses that say disrespectful person. I'll have this unconscious bias going on towards you. And every time we interact, we're going to have an issue. And that can destroy trust. It can destroy partnership. It can make it really difficult for people to work together and achieve a common goal. And that's why I am constantly running around the world saying we must talk about respect and how important it is.
Well, as you're talking, there's so many different things running in my mind, and I can't help but, think about where we are right now with some of the racial issues that are happening on throughout the entire globe.
Yes.
And
Yes.
for me, I see disrespect happening from all areas.
All directions. Yeah.
Just ridiculous. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, I think that's what, for me, is so frustrating when you see those things occurring and you just want everybody to take a step back.
You really do. You really do. And that goes back to getting your shift together. We have a history in this country, of course, of racism. That's just a fact. And there's a history of documented evidence around police brutality. But that doesn't mean all police are horrible racists. And it doesn't mean all protesters are left-wing radicals. But the vast majority of us are somewhere in the middle. And what most of us want is decency, fairness, and to be treated with respect, whether we're cops, whether we're protesters, and so on. So what we're trying to do at the center is to educate people on how important respect is as a foundation of a good relationship, either a working relationship or even a personal relationship. You mentioned your children. If we can help them understand the nature of respect and how it drives all of our interactions and underpins it, I believe that we can move through all these troubles that we're having, provided our leaders, and that's why we call this the Center for Respectful Leadership, provided our leaders are willing to move forward on this, provided they're willing to accept and understand how powerful respect is, because, disrespect can be very powerful too. You can drive all sorts of things with disrespect, and you might even lead and win. The example I often give is if you're working in an environment where the boss is incredibly disrespectful, filled with command and control, and you're desperately in need of the job, and you'll put up with just about anything because you need the job. And so you hate your boss, you probably hate your job, but you need it because you need the health benefits, or you need the money, or whatever the reason is. You could sustain that for a little while. But for most people, if they see any other option, they will get the heck out of there. And meanwhile, while they're there, productivity's down, their commitment, their loyalty, you name it, there's a laundry list of negative impacts of disrespect. And the problem is a lot of leaders don't even think about that. They're so fixated on the numbers. They're so fixated, let's go, let's get it done, that they forget that respect is a vital ingredient.
Well, and I think you just opened up the door to where you're talking about is 5, don'ts as far as respect.
Yes.
You talk about respectful don'ts. Don't try to stop disrespect with more disrespect.
Right.
Tolerate disrespect.
Right.
Don't be distracted. Don't minimize the power of respect, and then don't stop practicing respectful leadership. And so for me, I think your first one, which is don't try to stop disrespect with more disrespect, is one of the most difficult challenges that I have. I mean, growing up with 3 brothers, growing up in a blue-collar world, I mean, we used to use sarcasm heavily. I find myself using it to the point to where it diminishes and disrespects. I mean, that's how I was, indoctrinated into the world.
And by the way, it's not socioeconomic. I was raised, we were pretty wealthy. My dad was a famous sports writer. We were pretty wealthy when I was growing up. My brothers and I, oh my goodness, we would just rip into each other and tear each other apart. Interestingly now, certainly with my older brother, I have a loving, wonderful, powerful relationship with him, and we are truly respectful of each other. But we had to get there through work. We had to work at it. We had to pay attention to it. We had to figure out a way to love each other. And it took a while. And I'll be honest, I haven't found that way to do that with my younger brother, and I'm supposedly an expert in this. So family dynamics are incredibly challenging. And I think that the first respectful don't try to stop disrespect with more disrespect. Where that came from actually was about 25 years ago. When I moved to California, and everybody drives on the freeway out here. It's you go to the store, you drive on the freeway. And people would cut each other off, driving 80, 95 miles an hour. And I used to get so angry, and I'd, do the bird, and I would honk. And sometimes if I had leased a really fast car, I'd compete with them and cut them off. And I'm thinking, one day I thought, boy, this is not healthy. But I don't know what to do about it, and I didn't do anything about it. And then my now ex-wife called me up and said, hey, our son's been hurt in an accident at school. Can you get to he's at the hospital in the emergency room. Can you get there? How fast do you think I drove? How many people do you think I cut off? And so now what I finally realized is that it is possible that the person who just cut me off is actually heading to the emergency room because their kid just got hurt. Or there's a family emergency or what have you. So is that likely? Nah, it's probably they're just late, or they're inconsiderate, or they got a fast car and they want to drive fast. But by having an intention and ascribing a non-aggressive, non-negative emotion or non-negative intention to that other person, I actually free myself from the need to be disrespectful back. Now, that's a very long-winded way of saying turn the other cheek and don't ascribe negative intention. But that's essentially what I'm asking us all to do. Don't flip the bird at the person who zooms by you on the freeway. Just assume the possibility, that's all, that maybe they're on the way to the emergency room, or somebody's giving birth to a child, or somebody's been injured. Maybe that's a possibility. And that will give you just enough room to go, okay, I don't need to lose my cool here and bang on the steering wheel and be all disrespectful.
Well, for me, I mean, what you started talking about there was the whole empathy and compassion component and all of that. And,
Right.
So what we were talking about, the response is, hey, let's what people are doing in a lot of instances are trying to squash disrespect, or what they perceive as disrespect, with more of the disrespect. And at some point it has to end. And
it just escalates. I know from my experience, and you have a lot more knowledge about this, but in customer service, 9 times out of 10, when a customer's upset on the phone and screaming in your ear about how horrible your company is and all this kind of stuff, it's just because they felt disrespected or treated unfairly or screwed over some way, and they have no filter. They feel you're a representative of the organization, and so they're going to let you have it. And the thing I've found is folks who've been in the business for a while, and you and I know the turnover is really high in that business. The folks who have lasted longest, they don't take it personally. They understand. They use respect language, and they apologize sincerely on behalf of the organization. And they try to pivot into, let's see how we can help you, rather than push back and say, hey, don't you talk to me like that, because it doesn't work. But when you try to help somebody, even if they're incredibly upset, they will eventually calm down, as long as they feel like they've been heard. If you deny that their complaint is valid, then they'll keep being disrespectful. So it's an interesting dynamic, and one which old-timers who've stuck with it, in my experience, have learned.
Well, I think what you're saying is, there's several things that could assist with people to be able to essentially impact the customer experience. But I also have to come to the situation where there's people who are just, over the edge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They've gotten to the point to where there is no rational thinking that's going on.
Right.
And one of the things I even say quite often is that you can't talk the rationality into the
Right. But you can de-escalate them. You can say certain things, such as, I hear you, I understand, or I would be upset too. Most, not everybody, but most reasonable people will respond to that kind of language, as long as it comes from your heart, as long as it's sincere. There are always, it's funny, my leadership trainees, people I work with in my leadership programs, say to me, well, what if you've got a boss who's deliberately, what we call poking the bear, deliberately being disrespectful just to get a rise out of you or just to cause chaos? And you know what? We have leaders in our world who do just that. That's what they're all about. And I'm no psychologist, but I just say, well, it sounds like there's somewhere on the continuum of sociopathy. And my fallback position with a sociopath is I just say, I'm sorry, I have to go to the restroom. And I just walk away. I just get out of there, because you will not win. And if you try any of the techniques that we ascribe, try to be decent, try to be respectful, they will twist that around and use it against you. So, the best thing you can do is just walk away from it. I know that's kind of hard in customer service. You're not supposed to hang up on a customer. You could request that they breathe. You could request that they hold off on their complaint. You could try to talk them to death before they get a word in edgewise, or just let them vent. Just let them go, let them go, let them go, and it might go on for a while. You could hold the phone away. It's tough dealing with sociopaths.
Well, okay. So ultimately what you're talking about is there's at a higher level, there's two different types of respect that you mentioned. And tell us what they are.
Well, there's some really interesting research that the first type of respect is what I would call instant respect. It's based upon mostly visual cues. I'll give you a classic example. For most of us, if we are walking through a street fair and we're looking at the art, we're maybe buying some food and stuff like that, and we see a cop standing there in the street fair, kind of just looking around, just kind of being there, most of us would instantly be respectful towards that police officer, might say hello or what have you. Now, if you, and this is true of me, have had some run-ins with the police, you might not give that cop respect in that moment. You might avert your eyes, you might walk away from them, but it's unlikely that you're going to try to instantly be disrespectful in public to that police officer. That's unlikely. Again, if you're a sociopath, that's a whole different thing. So my point is that respect can be instantly triggered based upon visual cues, and it has nothing to do with knowing who the person is. The second type of respect is what's called developed respect. And developed respect usually happens in relationships that have rolled out over time. I'll give you another example. Let's say that you and I first start to work together. And this is our very first day, and we greet each other. Hi, Jim. Hi, Greg. Nice to meet you. It's a pleasure. What have you done in the past? Blah, blah, blah. We have a nice chit-chat. Okay, it's going to be great to work with you. And then over time, every time we get together, you smile, you say hello, we have a nice interaction. We never, have confusion with each other, and we work well together. Eventually, I will develop a level of respect for you because you've treated me in a way that I find disrespectful. And of course, the opposite is also true. If we continue to butt heads in our interactions with each other, eventually I'll have that lens that says disrespectful. So the first type of respect is instant. And it can happen with anybody, and it could be also instant disrespect as well. And the second type is developed respect or developed disrespect.
Well, and this respect leads to something that you have found is in all something that's important. That's in all higher performing organizations. And what is that you found?
Well, what we found is in concert with what the research that Google has done. You may have heard about it as creating what are called psychological safety. They researched their highest performing teams. And what's fascinating is, in the diversity and inclusion world, there was the belief that a highly diverse team is more likely to be effective as a team. And there is some data that supports that, but only if that team has high levels of psychological safety. In other words, people feel safe speaking their minds, that they don't feel they're going to be shot down or treated with sarcasm or abuse when they put their ideas out there, where there's a level of fairness, where everyone feels they can contribute or not, and no one's being put on the spot, and no one is monopolizing the spotlight. So psychological safety in concert with a highly diverse team, those are the ones that have the highest performing results. And that is ideally what we want to strive for, I believe, in most of our organizations. Now, why is the diversity part so important? It's mostly for diverse perspectives, diverse experiences. Jim, you were raised in Chicago. I'm from New York. We have complete, big cities, big American cities. The assumption is, hey, we must be a lot alike. New York is a city and neighborhoods just like Chicago is. And each one is unique and distinct, and we have all sorts of different experiences. So the diversity of thought, diversity of experience, the diversity of ideas, and combined with the safe psychological space, bingo, you've got yourself a high-performing team.
Well, without a doubt, all of this requires us to have some resilience and, really have some focus. One of the things that we look on the show to help us with that are quotes. Is there a quote or two that you like that you can share?
Yes, thank you so much for asking. The one I always go back to when I talk about respectful leadership is Maya Angelou's famous quote where she said, "People will forget what you said and people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." People will forget what you said, forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And as a leader, that is something I want to put it on a poster, put it up on your wall, because if you get that right, if people feel respected by you, they'll walk off a cliff for you. They will step up. They will be loyal when the going gets tough, when there's a crisis like we're living through now with this pandemic. People will step up. But if they've never felt respected by you, if they've never got the sense in their gut that you have a level of respect and caring and empathy for who they are as people, you'll lose them. You'll lose them fast. And if there's another opportunity somewhere else that they can go to, even if it's lesser pay, but they feel like they're going to be respected and make a contribution, they're gone. Respect is a great equalizer and a hell of a good motivator.
Well, but we have struggles and all that, right? And you talked about one that you had. I've had them. I've talked about the ongoing one with not battling back with disrespect. But do we talk about getting over the humps on the show because we can learn so much from them? Is there a time where you've gotten over the hump that you can share?
Yes, there's quite a few. I had at one time a colleague who was really bright and really talented, and he went to work for me, and I was the leader of the organization. My mistake was in becoming best buddies with this guy, in that we would hang out, we would drink, we would party together, we would do things together all the time. And it wasn't based so much on respect, it was based more on we had fun together, we enjoyed each other's company. Well, then he had some performance slip-ups. There were issues that came up. And when I tried respectfully to give him feedback and to set goals and expectations, he basically said, "Screw you." He had no respect for me because he'd seen me behave like a frat boy who didn't care. And so I learned I eventually had to let him go. And it was ugly. And it scarred me to this day. That happened nearly 20 years ago. I will never forget that mistake. Now, the way I've interpreted it, unfortunately, and this is the only way I can function, I tend not to socialize with the people who work for me because I've learned the lesson that if I'm a very personable guy, I let my hair down, I'm very informal, and if I let that happen with people who work for me, their respect for me goes down. So I don't do it. I'm still there with them. If we have an organized company event that I'm leading, I am there. I'm the cheerleader. I'm saying, let's dance, everybody. Let's have fun. But I will not one-on-one let all my hair down with my individual employees because I just feel that I need to have respect for them in their personal space and who they are, as well as respect for myself, and not let it go that far.
Well, I think that's really important information because I think you could probably apply the same thing why we have different experiences at home as well, because we've let our hair down at home, and therefore the respect things are harder in the house than it is away. So, but when I start looking at your work, writing in the books, the coaching and consulting, the other careers that you've had, but then you have the nonprofit that you're working on, I'm sure you have several goals in mind, but is there one you can share with us?
There is. I turned 60 recently, and I feel good. I'm all good. But, you reach that point in your life and you're kind of thinking, well, what's my legacy? What am I leaving? So my team and I are developing online curriculum. I'm writing an additional book. I'll be writing a few more books. But I want to leave a legacy to the world of a greater understanding and value around respect. And long after I'm gone, I dream of having a center of an actual physical place. We're looking at partnering with the Joan Kroc Peace and Justice Institute at the University of San Diego. We're in discussions with them that perhaps we can locate our center there. And that eventually people, once we've understood and have dealt with this pandemic, and hopefully we won't have to deal more, so people can come together and learn and practice respect together. That's my ultimate dream. That's my 10-year goal. But right now we're launching in about a few months a whole suite of online resources on respect. And that's what we're focused on right now.
And the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. An Even Better Place to Work is an easy-to-use solution that gives you a continuous diagnostic on employee engagement along with integrated activities that will improve employee engagement and leadership skills in everyone. Using this award-winning solution is guaranteed to create motivated, productive, and loyal employees who have great work relationships with their colleagues and your customers. To learn more about An Even Better Place to Work, visit beyondmorale.com/better. All right, here we go, Fast Leader Legion. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Greg, the Hump Day Hoedown is a part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Greg,
okay,
are you ready to hoe down?
I'm ready to hoe down.
All right. So what is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
Today, I am procrastinating because I keep getting stuck in my office and I'm not doing all the things I should do. And so I'm not getting it all done.
What is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Leave clean. And what I mean by that is if you decide to leave a job, don't leave it in a mess. Clean it all up so that people will remember you well after you're gone.
And what is one of your secrets that you believe contributes to your success?
I'm a positive kind of guy. I try to look towards the positive and assume the best in people. Sometimes I'm proved wrong, but I try to stay positive and assume good intention on the part of most people.
And what is one of your best tools that helps you lead in business or life?
Oh, I love to use what I call reflective or mirror listening, where I say, what I think I'm hearing you say is this. Is that right? I love that tool. Reflective listening is a really powerful tool.
And what would be one book you'd recommend to our Legion? It could be from any genre. Of course, we're going to put a link to The Respectful Leader on your show notes page as well.
Okay. One of the books that I love, it dates back a few years. It's called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. It is a great book. It's also a business fable, just like mine. And it's a great book for understanding as a leader how teams function or not.
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net/Gregg Ward. And Greg is spelled with 2 G's on the end. Okay, Greg, this is my last Hump Day Hold On question. Imagine you were given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you could take the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you, but you can't take it all. You can only choose one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you, and why?
I would take back with me meditation. I'm a pretty intense guy. I get spun up. And if I had learned to meditate and practice it way back then, I think I'd be in a better place than I am now.
Greg, I had fun with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
They can connect with me through the Center for Respectful Leadership's website, which is respectfulleadership.org, O-R-G.
Gregg Ward, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you and thanks you for helping us get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.